Welcome back to the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'm just out here enjoying my yard, seeing the beautiful sun, seeing the beautiful day, enjoying the day. And I found some interesting information from Chris Ramsey of Area 52 on the system that the UFOs are probably using. And he makes a very interesting case. It is somewhat compelling because of the types of patterns through the previous decades that we've learned about. These patterns are really unique and interesting in that they show us that there is a procedure and that for the most part they have followed this procedure. And I thought it was interesting the patterns that he brings out in this discussion and how they point to a systematic seeding of the entire universe, as it were, or at least as far as the ET's technology will let them do this. And this is not a new idea, but the actual evidence that he shows is really remarkably interesting. So let's look at this pattern. Let's see what Chris is saying, and let's go on a very interesting discussion. He is talking with the Third Eye Drops, and they have a really in-depth discussion. It's this particular idea that I want to point to and discuss the most.
It connects a lot of dots, but it seems like there's like some type of von Neumann-esque sort of panspermia thing happening here. Whereas, okay, in the 4chan whistleblower talks about these mobile construction units that live underwater and create these craft that are built to spec, or as Matt Brown put it, made to, he didn't say built to spec, he said
built to purpose or something.
Made to purpose.
Yeah.
And here's that clip that Chris and Michael are talking about.
Why so many shapes? Why do you think so many shapes? I used to think flying saucers were discs. I used to think UFOs were flying saucers. That's what I used to think. Now, after knowing this guy for so long, reading all the reports, getting whistleblowers, talking with him, why so many shapes?
I think part of it's sometimes these might be, made to purpose. So, if they're only making it for a specific use case scenario, they'll design it to excel in that mission.
I guess we know that. We do that.
Absolutely.
We have bombers that look a certain way, and then we have reconnaissance vehicles that look another way. I guess.
Star Wars, they have giant cruisers, and they have the X-fighters, for different jobs. Would you be surprised to hear about cases where these things, large objects, come out of the ocean or go back into the ocean? Does that sound familiar?
I would not be surprised. I have not seen very large objects go in and out of the water, but I've definitely seen small to medium-sized UAPs either going into the water and disappearing, or going in and out, or coming out of the water.
So this idea that there are different types of craft, now Jake Barber has described 9 different shapes of vehicles, right? That shouldn't surprise us if an advanced civilization in a different arm of our particular Milky Way galaxy is actually throwing out lots of seeds, lots of potential capabilities, and Chris does discuss this, but it makes perfect sense. It's not going to be the original generation that takes off from a far distance, millions of light years away in our galaxy. It's not going to be that type of a generation that makes it to their final point. It could be tens of thousands of generations later who finally arrive here, for instance. And they potentially, and that means that they potentially could have been here on Earth for billions of years. Life rose pretty early after the Earth formed. We do know that, and that's been one of the crazy anomalies in these sciences of discovering that, oh my gosh, very much after, just soon after the Earth cooled, life began to happen. maybe those seeds were planted here. This is really interesting. And crazy thing from my Mormon past, Brigham Young did teach that Adam and Eve were brought here from another place. And boy, did the early church leaders rebel against that one. That's part of the Adam God theory that Mormonism just hates no matter what. And yet Brigham Young might have got it right. Crazy as that is, that's a fascinating idea.
Which sounds an awful like built to spec. So these beings seem to be built that way as well. The beings that are aboard these craft, they also seem to be built to spec. There are many cases where people have said that as soon as the beings are taken away from the craft, the beings die, like they're attached to the craft. There's been people who said that the craft seem alive and have this like weird skin. That the craft have no toilets and no living areas, nothing personal. It's all really exactly what it needs for the task at hand. And so are these beings. They're built in that way specifically as well, without gender, they don't really eat, they have no teeth, and it's just kind of they're ephemeral and disposable. And they're treated as such as well.
So these particular beings that some have been in contact with these specific crafts, say over the last 80 years on our planet, they might not be the same type of beings. And in fact, they almost couldn't be when you really stop and think about it. They can't be the same type of beings that Chris Bledsoe has been interacting with these orbs. And in the book Making Contact by Alan Steinfeld, J.J. Hurtak has a chapter in there where he describes the beings. They appear as orbs or spheres. Their energetic geometries is what Chris Bledsoe appears to be seeing, and superluminal light bursts or sparks hovering around human bodies in singular or collective gatherings, and they're made of energy. And not only that, but these particular types of beings may not need a spacecraft. He's saying this on page 106 and 107. They may not need an actual spacecraft because they're traveling with their minds, not with a physical ship. And they become basically light. They use the light spectrum to travel. But then again, the downside of that is they're limited to the speed of light. But if you're going to send out 500 trillion seeds like some of my big trees in my backyard do every spring, then it's not going to matter. Time isn't going to be an element that you worry about. You just want to get it out there and then possibly monitor the progress of the seeds. And this is where the system, as Chris Ramsey's discussing, goes to.
And now these things are ejected from this mobile construction unit, sometimes without beings, and they're sent across, to monitor or in some cases shut down these nukes that might be tilting the scales a little bit. And so if you were a species that was looking to seed the galaxy, you would not do it yourself. You would evolve past that point. You would incorporate some type of technology to do it for you, at least preliminarily, and send those out. And if you had the ability to travel the universe at will in a blink of an eye, then you would be able to do this to 100 million planets at least at the same time, right? There would be an X amount of exoplanets that you could do this to. And each of those exoplanets wouldn't hold the correct conditions, right? Too much radiation on this one. Gravity is just not right. Oxygen levels, nitrogen, we're allergic to this plant. Whatever it is, there's always going to be something on these planets where you have to live in a suit or underground or in a bubble, which isn't ideal. So way more ideal to take whatever life is already what primitive life is already seeming to grow on that planet and inject your DNA to then preserve your own seed into that planet.
So now that we're thinking along these lines, the possibility really opens up. This is basically the idea behind Johnny Appleseed. The way I was taught it as a child is he would just go through the path, he would go in the mountains and just toss the seeds wherever they may. And some seeds planted and some seeds didn't. Farmers do it much more systematically on their farm, but both methods seem to work. The key is having the abundance of seeds, right? The key is having lots and lots of potential. And it's going to, even Jesus talked about the some seeds that are strewn fall on stony paths. Some seeds fall on good soil. Some seeds do okay for a time and then they wither and die. Other seeds completely flourish. And so this theme here on Earth, it appears to me this system is just basically taken out onto a galactic scale. And that makes really interesting sense when you think about this. Let's keep listening to Chris.
Inject DNAs of other plants and animal life into these plants as well and create this zoo of incredibly vast and variant life forms, and then place these mobile construction units, you want to call them that, these von Neumann probes, into the oceans of all these planets that act as an immune response pretty much, and then act as this monitoring system to make sure that everything's going well. And anytime you see things come in or leave the atmosphere, that might just be other probe-like injections of other biome.
Yeah, you would want to, if they are controlling these units remotely or even with their minds, you would want to put them in the most favorable spot on whatever planet or system that you're spreading out them, the seeds to grow, and oceans would make good sense. Assuming, of course, now the biology is probably similar to ours. We've seen that on the binary codes in crop circles, not the ones that the people have faked, but the genuine crop circles. There are some that have binary codes, and they've answered the Arecibo response that Carl Sagan sent out into space by bringing it back and showing that they're not based on carbon, they're based on silicon, things like that. So oceans may not be, and then the similarity of structure type, 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, eyes, their nose and mouth function differently, etc. So this is quite interesting.
To wonder why we have cephalopods and also Venus flytraps and kangaroos and lizards and fish, and like, it's so vast and strange. It would make sense that all of that just comes from different parts of the universe, and that these intelligences that are controlling this system behind it all are just trying to make sure that life progresses and that life exists in the universe. Like, that's their goal. And whether it's AI or whether it isn't, doesn't matter. It's just about preservation of life. And how can we make it the most vast and the most beautiful is by, throwing out these systems, seeding everything in this, and just terraforming absolutely everything that they can. And manipulating the DNA of this animal so that it fits on this planet, and so on and so forth, and just doing that over and over and over.
Now, it's really crazy that that's basically what Brigham Young said God did with Adam and Eve. I'm just saying, I'm just throwing that out there. They were prepared. The earth was prepared for humankind, and then they were prepared to be able to come from another planet onto this one. I'm just throwing that out there. Sometimes earlier quirky ideas don't end up being quite so quirky after all. And of course, being a church, it wants to focus on correct doctrine. It's even gotten to the point now to where they think you have to believe correct doctrine in order to be saved. And if you don't believe their interpretation of correct doctrine, then they'll kick you out, etc. Typical church, organized religion thinking, right? We're not doing that here. I'm just throwing that out as kind of a fun little idea that I might bring up with my Mormon friends. I might say, you know, the ET UFO thesis might actually match closer to Brigham Young's Adam God doctrine than the current church believes. Kind of different.
Right. So if you're out there psionically or war games or whatever it is, trying to attract this phenomenon, I don't believe that what we're interacting with is the intelligence behind the phenomenon. I think what we're triggering is some type of autoimmune response, some type of system, because that would make sense that you could do it over and over.
Yeah.
And that we found a way to do that, either through psionics, through love projecting out there and attracting these orbs, or through intense, you know, warlike scenarios, or even war itself. We hear about a lot of, you know, the Foo Fighter stuff, the Iraq stuff, and the nuclear meltdowns. And then you have the beings on board, right, which are ephemeral, and they're the ones doing the abductions. What do? It's all very procedural, and all is the same. If you look at John Mack, you look at David Jacobs, you look at Bud Hopkins, it's always they take you, they perform a procedure that has to do with genetics, they give you a tour of the ship, show you beautiful things.
Sometimes you get to bang a hot hybrid.
That's right. And then other times, and then at the end of it, they show you the most terrible things. They show you the Holocaust. They show you like the terrible, you know, nuclear wars and famine and starvation, and say, you know, that's what's going to happen if you don't smarten up, right? Random stranger that lives in North Dakota or whatever, right? If you don't smarten up, the world's going to die. And you're like, oh my God. And then surely they know that saying that to us doesn't change anything. Surely they figured that out by now, that by showing yourself to a bunch of children in Rua, Zimbabwe, and telling them the world's going to end if they don't stop with this technology stuff. And then all that happens is these children grow up and they speak at UFO conventions or lose their minds.
Yeah.
Right. Surely they understand that that's not working. Right. So why continue to do it? I think it's just part of the system. I think, again, this is all just system talk.
All right. So that's quite an interesting take on this. Because he's right. I've actually wondered that myself. I thought, how is it that they keep trying over? You know, we've said our government is keeping all of this top secret, that they have the craft, that they're perhaps are living beings, and they have dead alien bodies. Okay, we've got all that, but they keep attempting to do the same thing. And I've touted Artie Six Killer Clark's books, The Sky People and Space Indians, and where she is interviewing person after person, thousands of people down there in Guatemala, Mexico, Central America, Mesoamerica, and the ETs are still visiting them, but it's not changing anything on a large scale. That's actually kind of been one of my complaints. You know, they show us the horrible things that are happening with the climate, or with the agriculture of the world, or with potential nuclear disaster, etc. But why are you going to and no offense intended, but why are you going to Central America, where those are some of the poorest people on earth, and they certainly obviously don't have the technological prowess to destroy the world through nuclear war? Why are you not going to where the nuclear building companies are and talk to them? And so this idea of a system, in a way, answers that. I only think partially. I'll have to put some more thought into this. But yeah, this kind of opens up my ability to understand the almost quirky way that the ETs seem to be visiting different people around the world, because it's not working. We're still, we're on the brink of World War III. Again, another war. And again, just what? 70 years down the road. It was only 35 or so years between 1 and 2, and now we've lasted a little longer between wars, but now the world is all goofus again. We can't seem to pull our heads out of the dark spots. We still, perhaps we lack the IQ quotient. I don't know. I'm not sure. You know, my faith waxes and wanes with humanity, but this is truly a most remarkable insight that I'm going to put some more thought into.
They have this simulation of consciousness that interfaces with us, that floods us with endorphins, makes us feel good. It's all a procedure every single time. And it's so procedural that you can ask two witnesses back in the 1970s who don't know each other to describe what happened to them, and they'll describe the exact same scenario, right? And this is pre-internet, pre any publication of the matter. They'll still describe the same thing. So it seems like a system, at least half of what we're interacting.
I think his idea has merit, and I'm going to look more into this, at least with a different approach than what I've been doing. And that's the value of all these discussions. Again, you notice that he's observed certain types of patterns, for the last 80 years or so. And these appear to point towards a system of interaction. This is the value of studying the history of the UFOs. This is the value of studying the abduction accounts. This is the value of learning, attempting to have different methods in order to contact these alien species, alien to us, unless, of course, they really are us from the future, which is also extremely interesting, because that means we do make it past whatever disaster might be looming in front of us. That could be good news. But perhaps, and this might be unfortunate, I don't know, it depends. I don't have the larger context just yet, but perhaps that's a good thing that they're here to intervene, because we just can't do it without help. It appears to me that we lack the ability to have a longer picture as well as a larger picture on a species level. We have gotten to the point to where we're too narcissist here and now. It's all about me, 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 me. And that's so short-sighted. It just is. But that's where we're at. So thanks for watching the Backyard Professor Responds videos. I'll be back as I find more. Appreciate y'all. Hit the like and subscribe and share button. I will return shortly.